I'm Ted Santos, and it is Friday. It is time for a little YouTube and chill. And we are the show that takes on intimacy, and we love talking about sex and relationships. So we're going to sit back, we're going to chill, and we're going to YouTube it. We're going to live stream. We're going to talk about intimacy. We're going to talk about sex. And specifically, we're going to talk about sex and how it impacts women. It's amazing. I just find it amazing that so many women don't understand their bodies. So, yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where this topic came from. As you come into the room, smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is a good time to subscribe. Last week, I didn't do a show. I took a vacation. I didn't do a show Friday or Sunday. So I took a couple of days off and just kind of relaxed. And I did some research for this show. I really dug into it more than I normally do. So it's Friday. We're going to YouTube it. We're going to chill. We're going to sit back. We're going to talk about some facts and what's really happening in this whole world of sex, where women have been told they can do what men do. So, I love doing a screen share. I'm going to do some screen shares, and we're actually going to hear some professionals, some expertise from the medical professionals who understand what's happening with women when it comes to sex, even though women don't understand these things. So we are going to dig in, dive in. So share this video. This video needs to be shared with men and women. There are a lot of women out. You see the title, does high body count equate to a low value woman? There are so many titles I could have made for this show. I could have asked, are promiscuous women a liability to a man? And as we go through this and we go through some discovery, you're going to understand exactly why that is a great question to ask. So in this video, men are going to have a much better understanding of being able to sort of look right through a woman before even having sex and having an idea if she's emotionally unstable because she's been promiscuous, because she slept with a whole bunch of men, and she's going to say, well, body count doesn't matter. It's amazing to see women are saying, well, how can you say body count in the 21st century? No one cares. Yes, it matters. It matters because it makes women emotionally unstable, and emotionally unstable women will wreak havoc in your life. And if you're a man who doesn't understand what is going on before it even happens, like you can connect the dots before one dot is even connected. If you can't do that, you may invite a woman into your life who's going to create destruction, and she'll have no idea about building because she thinks what she's doing is normal. So this is a very, very important topic for men to address. It's also important for women to have a better understanding of their bodies. Look, guys, if you have daughters, these are things to warn your daughters about. This whole sexual liberation. A woman can be sexually liberated with one man. She can marry as a virgin and be with one man her entire life and be sexually liberated. A woman's body, her neurobiology, her biology wasn't made for promiscuity. She pays a price, and so do the people around her, including her children. So smash that like button when you come in. Subscribe if you haven't already. And share this video, because this is something that every man wants to understand. And if you've already married a woman who fits in this, there may be a better way for you to manage yourself and the conversations with her so you don't drive yourself crazy. So maybe these are the things that we're not told when we're young, because we're told women are made of sugar and spice and everything nice, and our moms are angels, and we think since our mothers are angels, or at least we thought she was, that she represented women. So a lot of guys go into relationships like this kind of blinded, and they don't really see. Someone mentioned to me that yes, women can be emotionally unstable, but it's hard to know because so many women majored in psychology or sociology. And you know what? A lot of those women who majored in psychology did so because they already knew something was severely wrong with them, and they majored in psychology so that they can figure out themselves or the dysfunctional dynamics of their families. So, as a man, even if even if you're doing the pump and dump, the last thing you want to do is dump a woman who's going to come back and slash your tires and bust your windows out. So you need to be able to telegraph and see that emotional instability way before you invite that woman into your life for some intimacy. So I've dropped my PayPal and Cash Apps. Support is always appreciated. For those of you just joining in, I didn't do a show last week. I just simply took off Friday and Monday. I took days off, not because it's summer. I just took some days off. Life has been hectic. Good stuff, good problems to have with clients. Doing a lot of work around transforming culture and mindset and all those things. And I just took a step back. So I wanted to come back fresh, and I did a lot of research for this. So I'm going to do a screen share, and I'd like you guys to have a much better understanding as to what's going on with women that you meet. So just to start, I'm going to pull out a study. Let's pull out a study, and then we're going to get into some videos where we can actually hear. I want to show one woman who's a doctor, and what she's going to say to you, and the kinds of changes a woman's body goes through with sex, just with one man. But then when you hear what she says happens to a woman when she has sex with multiple men, it's really. Some of you guys are like, well, you kind of knew this, but let's get the facts, so that in the event some woman wants to debate you on this, you have some facts to support it, to back it up. So let's do a screen share. So I want to bring up a study, and this is from the U.S. National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health, that's NIH. And if you look at the title here, it's the relationship between multiple sex partners and anxiety, depression, and substance dependence disorders, a cohort study. So they say changes in sexual behavior has resulted in longer periods of multiple serial or concurrent relationships. This study investigated the effects of multiple heterosexual partners on mental health, specifically whether higher numbers of partners were linked to later anxiety, depression, and substance dependency. Data from the Dunedin Multidisciplinary Health and Development Study, a prospective longitude study of a birth cohort between people born between 1972 and 73 in Dunedin, New Zealand, were used. Now, this is in New Zealand, right? So people very much have similar biology. Human beings are human beings. There are some differences, and it's amazing how women don't understand that there are some significant differences, and even if there's subtle differences just in secretion of neurochemicals, it's enough to affect decision making and how those neurochemicals affect the rest of the body can affect your own stability. So the relationship between numbers of sex partners over 3 age periods. So the ages were 18 to 20, 21 to 25, 26 to 32 years old. And diagnoses of anxiety, depression, and substance dependence order at 21, 26, and 32 years were examined using logistics regression. Um, so let's see, there was no. Now, one thing they said, increasing numbers of sex partners were associated with increasing risk of substance dependency at all 3 ages. Now, this you could definitely find against women who are sex workers, strippers. You find this dependency on substance and alcohol, because those women often have sex with many different partners. So this goes on to say this study established a strong association between number of sex partners and later substance disorder, especially for women, which persisted beyond prior substance use and mental health problems more generally. The reasons for this association deserve investigation. So, so they found a correlation, and so they really dug into it. So the NIH, National Institute of Health, did studies and found that there was a correlation, that there is a problem between women, mental health, and substance abuse by having multiple sex partners. So now let's hear. So that's what the experts in the field of science and sex, mental health, physical well-being, they found correlations. So they found it worthy. If men have too many partners, there can be a correlation between substance and mental health, but not nearly it. Especially more happens in women. So let's now look at what a woman in the medical profession says. This is a video, and I'm using so Fair Use Act. So I'm going to share a video, and I'm only sharing this video for educational purposes under the Fair Use Act. So I want to explore and use only for comparative analysis and, as I said, educational reasons, to understand what happens to women. This woman's going to go into more detail about the kinds of changes that happen in a woman when she has sex with one man and multiple men. So let's hear what she has to say.
Vicky, we live in this hookup culture where much of our society, they think that they can just go on one night stands and just have consequence-free relationships, sexual relationships.
Well, it's interesting because that's a lie that abounds, that, we've come through the media and other things to believe there's no consequence to sex. And as long as you're contracepting or whatever, it's all fine. But we don't really understand how it is our bodies work. We need to recognize, for instance, that we as women undergo profound changes when we have sex with a male, that there are many things that change.
So did you hear that? Women go through profound changes when they have sex with a man. There are many changes, many things for women to consider. See, these are things men need to understand. Unfortunately, a lot of women don't understand these things, so they end up giving their daughters bad advice, and the cycle perpetuates itself of dysfunctional women. But if men can understand these things, you can, for those of you who want to have children, you can make better choices and not mate with a woman who who's already who is already suffering from a mental illness and just doesn't know it.
It takes our body 6 months to make the adaptation to the sperm of our male partner.
Did you hear that? It takes 6 months for a woman's body to adapt to the sperm of a man. Yeah, and listen to what she's going to say.
Because before that, we are in an autoimmune reaction. Our immune cells are testing. What is this? Is this an infection? What is it? Our body comes to conclude that this is our sexual partner and now has made an adaptation. The reality is that this allows us women to be without consequence in terms of when we conceive children with this male, our body recognizes that this is with our partner. We carry cells from every child we ever conceive, so we carry the DNA of our partners.
And there are lots of women who are in denial about this, that she just said women carry the DNA of their partners. This video was made in 2010. And any woman who thinks women's body have evolved beyond that since 2010, you're being delusional. But maybe this woman can help you understand reality.
The rest of our lives. It's an interesting question. If I've had multiple partners and perhaps conceptions with multiple partners, that what might that mean to my body in terms of the immune system?
So I just think about that. Listen to where she's going to take this. Multiple sex partners, especially women who conceive through multiple sex partners, and what's happening with their body. And lots of women are having many more problems now than they did 30 or 50 or 80 or 100 years ago, when women were not this promiscuous.
Because I will now literally be carrying the genetic material of my partners contained in my children. We don't know what the long-term consequences of that are. The sperm has many antigens on it. And again, we think this is kind of neutral. We women have bodies that are acidic in chemistry, and males are alkaline. But what's interesting is that the last thing that happens with sperm production is there's a coating of vitamin C that's put on the sperm that allows it to survive in our woman bodies. So we make this adaptation to our partner. Sperm has these antigens, and interestingly, in men, if there should be a vasectomy or damage, what we've discovered is that.
All right, fellas, listen to this for when women say the solution is men should get vasectomies. This is critical for men to understand, because this is a woman who's going to break down the consequences and possible health risks to a vasectomy. You've got to hear this, guys.
That in the male body, sperm and blood don't ever meet each other if it's healthy. When there's damage, for the first time, the sperm and the blood meet, and it sets off an autoimmune reaction in the male. It's designed to do that, but this can lead to health issues for the male. Vasectomies are promoted as, well, safe, not a problem. But in reality, there are a few very brave doctors who have written about the fact that the male who has had a vasectomy may now develop autoimmune disorders, arthritis, some other sorts of diseases. There's also the question, of course, of where does the sperm go, which can create some very uncomfortable things for the male.
All right. Did you guys hear that? See, women always shout, get a vasectomy, and you can create autoimmune deficiencies in your body by your sperm. Like, where does your sperm? It's still during when you come, that's ejaculation. The sperm still releases, and now it's in your body. She said earlier that normally our blood and the sperm don't meet. If they do, the blood is going to see that as a foreign invader. Like, it's not accustomed to having sperm. Our blood as men is not our blood is not accustomed to having contact with sperm. So it triggers the body that there's a problem there. And she just said arthritis, and there are other problems that can result. So vasectomy is I understand a lot of guys have gotten it already. If you can get it reversed, it may be a good thing to do. But let's hear what else she says.
But there's more, again, also for the male. The reality is that seminal fluid, which we think of as kind of a carrier, it just kind of gets the sperm where it needs to go, is in fact biochemically very active. There are more than 30 different compounds that are contained in the seminal fluid. Different kinds of sugars, things like zinc, which would enhance our, as women, autoimmune systems.
So, our sperm uh, enhances a woman's health. They don't even realize this. Hey, what's going on, Breakthrough Kid? Thanks for joining. I'm doing a screen share on YouTube, and I'm showing a number of things where we're talking specifically about a high body count in women. Does it make her low value? And we're talking about right now, and I have a woman in the medical profession talking about the problems of a woman having sex with multiple men, like the serious health risks. All right, cool, cool. So let's go on.
So that we might not contract diseases from pathogens that would be present in intercourse. All these different kinds of substances. There are also many, many hormone pathogens that would be compounds that are continually very active.
So here, all right, just we're gonna go back. She's talking about, see, men can make women more healthy, just our biology. And just for a side note, if you didn't know that, when you kiss a woman, like tongue kissing, you're literally transferring testosterone, and that transference of testosterone um, makes her get more aroused. So there are many things that we transfer to women that are in their best interest, but having it from different men ends up not being in their best interest. I think, yeah, she's going to address that, the Breakthrough Kid. Yeah, because um, there's still uh, neuro neurobiological things that happen in a woman, oxytocin, but we're going to get into that. So let's continue. Let's hear what she said again.
Here it just kind of gets the sperm where it needs to go, is in fact biochemically very active. There are more than 30 different compounds that are contained in the seminal fluid. Different kinds of sugars, things like zinc, which would enhance our, as women, autoimmune system so that we might not contract diseases from pathogens that would be present in intercourse. All these different kinds of substances. There are also many, many hormones that are there. Luteinizing hormone, we think that's a woman hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone, that's a woman hormone. 13 kinds of prostaglandins. Some other things like dopamine are there. Why? Because we women absorb that material and we're changed forever. Every time we have intercourse with someone, if we absorb any of that seminal fluid, it's in our system for at least 15 hours. We're changed in a very real and concrete way by this sexual intimacy that's there. Furthermore, the brain chemistry in both men and women is triggered with sexual intimacy.
All right, Breakthrough Kid, she's going to answer your question now.
And we believe that because I say this is just a sexual encounter for pleasure, I'm not going to be changed, that it works. Our brain never gets the message that this has no consequence. The assumption on the part of our body is that sexual intimacy always has consequences, always has meaning. And as soon as we have this intimacy with this person, we trigger brain chemistry. We trigger, for instance, oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone both in men and women. There are other feedback systems there that make the brain feel good. Men, in particular, get vasopressin.
Okay, vasopressin. That's the correct pronunciation. You guys have heard me talk about as I pronounce it as vasopressin. Vasopressin. It is significant in men, and women have little to none. They have very little vasopressin, and it's for a reason. And she's not going to say it here, but just for women who have an overabundance of vasopressin, those women, as little girls, share some things with little boys, but when they become adults, that vasopressin is an overwhelm for them, and a lot of those women become prostitutes, drug addicts, alcoholics, criminals. Those are your strippers. So their brains and body do not handle vasopressin the way it's a male hormone. It's not for women. What she's saying, oxytocin is still secreted because the brain will automatically go into intimacy for a woman. It doesn't care if it's a one night stand or if it's a 20-year marriage. The brain is designed to function certain ways. And there's something as a bond break. I don't remember if she talks about that, but let's see what she says.
In particular, get vasopressin. This is a male hormone. We women have a little, but it's predominantly male. And when we have sexual intimacy with someone, what happens to the male is this hormone now makes him have a preference for this female that he just had sex with.
So so even men. So when our vasopressin secretes, it makes us have a preference for a woman we just had sex with. So everyone's affected. We're just not affected the same way as women are.
Female that he just had sex with. Hooking up, the sense that it doesn't matter, is physiologically an impossibility. We know that in men, it takes 72 days to produce sperm, and that at each point there's a change in the sperm. It's changed in some way. But what we don't realize is that the sperm has to be changed in the woman's body to have the capacity to enter the egg. There's a phenomenon when the sperm enters that's called capacitation and adaptation. For 5 hours or so, it sits in our woman bodies, and our woman chemistry changes the sperm. So now the sperm has the capacity to enter the egg to go through this acrosome reaction.
Your answer to your question is she did in the beginning. She specifically talked about how a man's DNA stays in a woman's body forever. So she addressed that early on.
To this acrosome reaction. Before that, it can't do it. It swims differently after this. It swims with, if you will, more intent. Prior to that, the tail is kind of lazy and it moves it where it needs to go, but not with determination. After being changed by the female body, the tail is this whiplash kind of thing. It's very direct. It's very effective in moving the sperm forward to meet the ovum. This is incredible when you think about it. There is an author in Britain who has written about the fact that supposedly there are 3 types of male sperm.
So listen to this. She just said there's 3 types of male sperm. This is more of an FYI. So we have 3 types of male sperm in us. Listen to what she's going to say.
The first is called the egg getter. The second is called the blocker, and the third is called the killer. I think maybe he was a rugby fan or something, because they're not really highly technical terms. But if you look at pictures of sperm, you can see 2 of these for certain. You can see that the egg getters are what we expect. They're very sleek, a pointed head and a tail. But the blockers are misshapen. They're kind of boxy, or they don't look like this very sleek sperm. The intent of the blockers is that they will fill in the crypts in the cervix. There are little compartments there, so that the egg getters can move through without getting stuck. Of the millions of sperm that come into our bodies, there's maybe only 20 or 40 that really get to the point of the egg. So there's this protective factor there. We want to get the egg getters where they need to go. The role of the killers has to do only when women have had multiple partners in a short period of time. These are very poisonous little sperm, and their intent is to kill the sperm of the other male. So effectively, there is a sperm war that goes on in a woman's body.
So we have sperm that are just straight up warriors. They go in like hitmen looking for sperm of another man and will assassinate them.
So effectively, there is a sperm war that goes on in a woman's body when there have been multiple partners. Also think about this in terms of the adaptation of her autoimmune system. Who's my partner? Her immune system must be on a real state of arousal here, because there's sperm from several males, and her body is trying to make this time adaptation. And what happens, this is purely a question that I don't know the answer to, but what happens when I've had many partners and my body hasn't made this 6-month adaptation to the recognition that this is my partner. Now, you can get pregnant before this. You can get pregnant the first time you have sex.
So she raised a great question. So if it takes a woman 6 months to adapt to a man's sperm, well, what happens if she's having sex with multiple men within 6 months and she doesn't have that time to adapt? That must be sending her body. That's outside of the woman's normal function. Uh, and so, what are the health consequences of that? And I heard what you're asking. So, you're asking what if they're using a condom, right? So, does that nullify that? But what it doesn't, it could nullify that the entrance of sperm in her body. But what it doesn't nullify is the secretion of oxytocin. Even if it's a one night stand, for the woman to have sex, she's going to have to secrete oxytocin to prepare her body. It's part of the preparation for sexual activity. And by doing that, that's part of her way of bonding with the man. So the body just automatically does that. Secretion of oxytocin and dopamine are nature's way of getting human beings to perpetuate. And it's probably in chimpanzees and orangutans and probably in lions and tigers. I mean, uh, this is just how you perpetuate the species. So women don't change that. The body only knows prepare for sex, secrete these biochemicals, and prepare for sex. But then there's this thing called bond and break. So you bond with someone, then you break, and then you break that off with the person, and then you have to bond with another person, and you break. Over time, you start to traumatize your brain. Two gynecologists, a male and female gynecologist, wrote a book called Hooked, and they got into that a lot deeper.
In fact, there's always a question sometimes from young people. They've been told you can't get pregnant the first time you have sex. But the reality is that we women are interested in sex. We're more arousable at the time of ovulation. Males around us perceive that we're ovulating by scent. They have an elevated testosterone level. They're more interested in sex, and sex happens. And
Well, hey, the breakthrough kid, that now this is not just personality. We've got to start looking at mental health is where the problem starts. And I showed an article from NIH, National Institute of Health, and they did studies in looking at anxiety and depression and mental health in women, and and the relationship between multiple sex partners, too many partners, and drug and alcohol dependency. So this is a mental health issue. It's not really a matter of personality. This is much bigger than personality.
pregnancy happens, and people are surprised by, how did that come to be? But the awareness that we're different. To know also that we women are very conditionable at the time of ovulation. This is some media effects research, and they had shown an erotic movie to women who were ovulating, and all of the women had an erotic response to this movie. They showed the same movie to women at other phases. We have different stages of our cycle. We have the follicle, the follicular stage, when the little follicles on our ovaries are developing. We have the ovulation stage, when one of the follicles breaks loose and the ovum is released in our body. And then the last stage is the luteal phase, when the little place in the ovary where the ovum was released becomes a major chemical factory, keeping the ovum alive to see if there is a pregnancy, and if there is, then keeping the baby alive until the baby builds its placenta. But this awareness here that during ovulation we're arousable. They showed the same movie to a group of women at these other phases, and there was a consistent response, but it was basically a very stupid, dirty movie. No erotic response. But the woman who saw this film once during the ovulatory phase had an erotic response showing the movie now again at any point in her cycle. The anthropologists talk about the fact that this is perhaps why, if we have sex with Mr. Wrong when we're ovulating, we now are hooked to Mr. Wrong.
You guys hear that? The woman has sex with Mr. Wrong while she's ovulating. She gets hooked on Mr. Wrong. So that she was relating that to women ovulating and watching porn and the erotica development that happens in them biochemically. So now she gets sex. This is the point. The breakthrough kid. The woman's biology doesn't know if a guy is good for her. It just starts this bonding process.
We now are hooked to Mr. Wrong. We all know that Mr. Wrong leaves when we're ovulating. That's why. If we have sex with Mr. Wrong when we're ovulating, we now are hooked to Mr. Wrong. We all know that Mr. Wrong leads to Mr. Wrong number 2. So this awareness of how this give and take, this dance, if you will, between men and women is so important. And it's so critical that we as women and men understand there's a lot more going on in our bodies than we've ever been told, so that we can, A, make really good choices about this. Do I want my body to be changed by this male? If I'm going to have sex with him, I am going to be changed by him.
See, this is the part women have to understand. And they believe they can just choose any man without consequences. And this is why we can actually ask the question: are promiscuous women a liability for men? Even for Mr. Wrong, she can end up being a liability because she's emotionally traumatized. So women are not being educated. I mean, hear what she just said. You know, we don't really, we're not educating women about their bodies. The feminists have said, sure, women, you can do whatever men do. And if men can do it, you can do it. We're equal. And we're really not. This woman is laying out, methodically and medically, that there are some real differences, and women are not getting off scot-free. I mean, perhaps we're starting to see the consequences, and women don't want to admit that they're having consequences. Last night, just as a side, I came up with this show because I was in Clubhouse, and this gentleman Vernon created a room, and he said single mothers are for recreation only. And I came in the room and I said, well, women, if you have children, your children are a liability to a single man. And they couldn't understand why. They were like, oh, my children are a blessing to a single man. No, your child costs money. And one woman tried to say, well, I'll pay for everything for my kid. But if we go to dinner, are you paying for your kid? If we go on vacation, you expect me to pay? Maybe call this petty, but your kid in my car is putting weight on it. That's more gas. I'm going to require a bigger house. And if you have 2 or 3 children, then I need a bigger house to accommodate your children before I even get to mine. And your children are stealing time and money from mine. They're eating food. I mean, all these things. Women couldn't, it was like their brains couldn't even compute. And I just wonder if women keep creating the kinds of damage that they're doing to their bodies by switching partners over and over again, if it's just becoming progressively more difficult for them to understand what's going on because they were never educated in the first place. They were told they can do what men can do, and it's an inaccurate statement. And this woman is making that so clear. I'm going to show another video after this. So if you haven't invited someone in here, this is really a good time. And I'm going to show another video that actually points to the specific mental health challenges that come from promiscuity in women. So as a man, you have a right to know a woman's body count, because that can have a direct impact on your well-being and your progress in your life, whether it's with your work or your hobbies or your friends and your own relatives. So yeah, exactly. They're past. So as men, the sooner you can read the writing on a wall that a woman is bringing emotional instability, the quicker you can make a decision. And I understand some of these women are just absolutely fine. They're gorgeous. They have such gorgeous bodies, and you may still want to lay them down, but you need to be like that Heisman Trophy, man. You need to you need to stiff arm them and don't fully invite them into your world. But women will bond. They're biochemically designed to bond with a man. They just are. They may have created some aberrations and severe dysfunctions in their brain's capacity to operate. but they're still going to bond. And I understand the whole pair bonding, but let's just hear what else this woman says. It's almost over.
And understand there's a lot more going on in our bodies than we've ever been told, so that we can make really good choices about this. Do I want my body to be changed by this male? If I'm going to have sex with him, what I am going to be changed by him. And we don't even know what some of the long-term consequences of this are, but we know that she's absorbing the material. And, how do I want to live my life? How do I want to be changed by my partner? What consequences might there be if I make these choices where I have, repetitive sexual partners? We don't know what some of these long-term consequences are. We do know, for instance, that the woman who has multiple partners in a short period of time may develop an infection that's called bacterial vaginosis, which is a very serious infection. And what happens is that the chemistry of her genital area has been changed. And now the bacteria that can grow there are what are called anaerobic bacteria. Those are always serious infections. Again, what we think is simple, what we think is without consequence, in fact, has serious long-term consequences. And, the more I learn about this, the more I'm in awe that nature, God has built us in this way to be complementary to each other, that we truly are changed by our partner and really become one in terms of this. Thank you, Vicki.
Okay, that's all, folks, from her. So many things that women just don't understand, And a woman said to me today, because I'm not a woman, I could never understand. I have no clue. I mean, do women really believe men are that dumb that they just can't learn about these things? It's really simple. Whether you study, you pick up a book, you read a journal, you talk to someone like this woman, there's so many ways to learn about what's actually happening. And it's imperative for men to have this kind of understanding of women so that you don't invite uh, absolute havoc and chaos into your life. And she thinks what she's doing is normal, and she thinks she's doing you a favor, which makes it more insane. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and this woman said it's really serious. It's not some normal thing. Exactly. Yeah, the clown world. Well, the quicker a man can determine the clown, the quicker he can keep himself out of that woman's self-destructive behavior. So let's see. I had this. Hmm. Okay. Uh, I'm looking at whether I should pull out these other articles. There was some psychology today. Uh, Actually, no. This guy. I'm going to show a video. Once again, fair use. I'm going to show a video of a guy who he's done some research, so he's going to lay it out. What's going on, Imperator? What's up? What's up? Good to see you in the house. So I'm going to do another screen share. Here we go. So this is going to be interesting. This guy did some research also. So I'm kind of taking a shortcut, but he's going to present some things so I don't have to read it to you guys. So under fair use, this is for educational purposes only. We are going to explore why promiscuity ruins women, but not men. This might be a good time to share this video with women. Uh, as you know, you can do this on IG or YouTube. If we do it on YouTube, you'll be able to see this guy, and maybe I'll do another screen share. But I think this guy is going to cover some great grounds. But what do you guys think so far of what you're hearing? I mean, all this stuff, these are things that you guys already knew. Hey, thanks, PJ. Things that you guys knew already, or uh, have they just sort of expanded some things or made some other things clearer? Because ultimately, see, if you guys can understand, so this study that came from NIH, it talked about how promiscuous women can end up with alcohol and drug dependency, right, and mental health problems. So, you know, there are women screaming, well, you can never know how many men I've been with because you can't tell by looking at or being in my vagina. That's not an indicator. No, you don't need that indicator. All you need to do is talk to this woman. At some point, she's not going to know how to manage conflict. At some point, she's going to talk about things that don't make sense. At some point, you're going to realize that she drinks too much. Like, and especially if she's in her 30s and she's still trying to drink like she's in college, man. You know, there's that sedating herself, uh, almost like she's still stuck, like she's a stripper or something. You know, strippers drink a lot because that's one way for them to deal with having sex with so many different guys and men that they're not even interested in. So, you know, there are certain behaviors that a woman will exhibit, that instability, that being overly defensive, that jumping to conclusions, like always defending themselves, that always that anxiety, that angst, right? So that you know, self-defense. I mean, women's brains operate like that anyway. But once you add too much sex, it starts to traumatize the brain, and they become an exaggerated version. They overdo it. Like as men, we know if a woman's on a menstrual cycle, you know, we understand certain things come with that territory. But like some women seem almost like they're always on their menstrual cycle, and if you bring up certain conversations, they freak out and they think freaking out and being upset over something like a simple question is normal. But for them, yes, it is normal because they've already become a emotionally aberrated, right? They have put their brain through so much shock of changing partner after partner. It's called the bond and break, that they've caused their brain to function at a heightened sensitivity of needing to protect itself because they're constantly with a new person, right? So there are signs that you guys can pick up to keep yourself keep those women out of your life. All right, so PJ, you get exactly what I'm talking about, right? And you don't invite those women into your life. So, you know, if you think of a relationship, or if you think of a relationship first, you're literally inviting someone into your life. So you have the right to decide who you invite in your life. And the same thing, even if it's a pump and dump, you're inviting that woman into your sexual life, even if it's just for, you know, a one night stand. So you get to decide. Yeah, so women who look for too much validation, right? This becomes a problem, right? Not just strictly daddy issues. So let's hear what this guy has to say. Why promiscuity ruins women but not men.
All right, in this video, we're going to be dealing with female promiscuity and why it's something you need to be attentive to as a man. It is one of the things that I get the most flack for. In that list of 20 red flags that I published for free in my upcoming book, Number 11 was talking about notch count and female promiscuity. And a lot of people lost their minds. Men were very confused. They were saying things like, well, if men can do it, then why can't women too? And women were saying, well, if men can do it, why can't women too? And I'm going to explain why in this video with some some cold hard fact. Let's hop right into it. The main reason is it boils down to her ability to pair bond over a long-term basis and dissatisfaction reported in the relationship for both men and women goes up dramatically as her notch count goes up. Interestingly, those figures don't correlate to men. The biggest difference between men and women specifically is men are born as nothing. We need to create value. We need to learn competency skills. Men generally are viewed as success objects by the world and by women. Women, on the other hand, are more valued for their beauty. I think it was observed by Dr. Warren Farrell in his book, The Myth of Male Power. He said that women are sex objects and men are success objects. And I think that holds true. So women's value comes from her preserving herself, her beauty, and her notch count. Whereas men, on the other hand, it comes from developing competency skills. So people are going to get mad. Oh, why does it have to be different? Why can't it be the same for everybody? Blank slate equalism does not exist. And I'll explain exactly why in this video if you hang around till the end.
So yes, I'll get into the STDs. There's I'll pull up an article. It not only talks about the increased risk of STDs, it also talks about how women can age. And if you just listen to what that woman previously was saying about how that can create confusion for a woman having sperm or seminal fluids from a man and her body needing time to adjust, she's overworking her body. This is how you'll see women start to age when they have too many men, sex with too many men. Yep, PJ, that's him. Yes, that is correct. So, yep. And speaking of cars, right? So some women can be really hot. They're beautiful. They have great bodies. So it's like having a 2021 Lamborghini, and already it has 50,000 miles on it. And we're in August, 50,000 miles. That is what some women are doing. They're racking up the miles. And too many miles comes with problems. Women don't like hearing that, except that's one of the way men measure women. So now let's look at he's going to look at sexual history and how it affects marital happiness. And they're actually in the study they looked at both men and women and how sexual history affects your marital happiness.
So I'm going to go over here to my screen. We've got a study from the Institute of Family Studies. And let's see here. Reporting of one lifetime sex partner has dropped dramatically over the years. You guys can find it. You can Google it. It was published in October of 2018. But essentially, these lines here represent the number of basically lifetime sexual partners by gender, so male, female. Back in the 1920s, you basically had an almost 80% chance of marrying a virgin. Today, reported, it's around 45%.
So it said almost 80% chance of marrying a virgin in 1920. In the 1920s, 45% today. What year is that? Oh no, that was 1980. He didn't catch that. This is ending in the 1980s, so this is not today. So in the 1980s, you had a 45% chance of marrying a virgin. I can see that. Yep, there were still 20-year-old and 25-year-old virgins in the 80s, for sure.
Now, I'm not sure how accurate this data is because I have not met a female virgin since high school, if I'm being honest. Again, this is reported data, so they're relying on the honesty of the people disclosing the information. I would suspect that these numbers are probably quite a bit different, and the data that I'm going to show you following up after this is going to reflect that. But let's just assume that this is true for the time being. So You'll actually notice over here that the number of men reporting getting married as virgins is actually going up, which is interesting. I think that men are having a hard time. Well, we know for a fact men are having a hard time in the sexual marketplace, getting good results with women. We've known that for a while. There's been a lot of studies that have been published on that. You guys can Google that. But just as an overview from 20,000 feet, this has changed over time. And we've seen this change as a function of society embracing more liberalized sort of terms and lifestyles, and we've been basically telling women to act more like men. Since 60s or 70s or so, roughly, I would estimate. But they've been told to work more, put off childbearing years. They've been told to get degrees. You see a general masculinization of the feminine in society. And that's just the trend that we're heading on. So it's really no surprise that you're going to see this. Now, how does that affect the ability to pair bond over a long period of time? And why am I telling guys that it's a red flag? Let's hop into that. So with this next chart over here that I'm going to show you, this is the relationship between sexual history and marital satisfaction. So again, this is reported data. A woman that has had one partner is reporting greater marital satisfaction than one that's had several partners, in fact. Again, the line for women is quite a bit different from that of men. Men generally report a greater level of marital satisfaction, regardless of notch count. I mean, like you can even see over here at this point over here, there's a spread of about 15% practically. So it's important to note that that relationship does exist, and it does get worse as the number of sexual partners increases. Again, satisfaction should be high, but over time, sorry, not over time, but as the number of partners increases, it actually gets worse. And women are far below men when it comes to this. So it seems to have a greater effect on women. So that's one of the things that you have to consider as a guy. Now, one of the things that isn't included in this study, I've seen it in another study somewhere else, but there's a direct relationship between the age at which she lost her virginity and the number of sexual partners. And basically it looks like this. So
Now, this is pretty important and it's interesting. So the age at which a woman lost her virginity can have a huge bearing on her ability to enjoy sex and a relationship.
if she was a young teen, let's say 14, you meet her at 30 and you decide to get married, have a couple kids, white picket fence and all that sort of stuff. If she's had her first sexual encounter at a very young age, at 14, let's say, and was in no long-term stable relationships, who knows what her notch count is? Could be 30, could be 50, whatever, it doesn't matter. That is a lower value woman to a guy than a woman that preserved her virginity until, I don't know, early 20s, let's say 22, and was in one long-term relationship for 8 years during that period of time before you met her and decided to get married and have kids. She would be essentially a better prospect if you wanted to have children with somebody. So the ability to pair bond goes down, dissatisfaction increases. All right, so the next thing that I want to cover with you guys is the increased reporting of personality disorders as it's associated with notch count. So
Now, this is important. So we're talking now. He's going to take us down the path of mental health. If you haven't liked the video, smash that like button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, great time to do that. Subscribe and hit the bell. And Imperator, yeah, there is, uh, there's a joke even in the Middle East about women who lie about their virginity. Someone was telling me that lots of couples in the Middle East uh, bring a chicken on their honeymoon because the parents come in the after the first night of the honeymoon. The parents come in to look at the sheets to see if there's blood. If she was a virgin, hymen breaks, there's blood on the sheets. And the joke is the couple bring a chicken because they killed the chicken and used the chicken's blood to pour in the bed, and the parents believe, oh, my daughter was a virgin, great, great, So even in the Middle East, they can be lying about virginity because they were having sex well before marriage. PJ, that's exactly it. That is the major reason I'm doing this show, because it seems like a lot of women don't understand what is happening to them. They don't understand the world they live in. It's like they're completely out of touch with reality. And the second problem is there are a lot of men who believe they are saving women or helping women by also denying the facts. Yes, no bloody sheets in the West. Definitely. I saw an ad that said, make black wedding dresses normal. So, so white is supposed to be for virgins. Yep, breakthrough kid, two issues, two men or more. Yep, yep. So, uh, and there was another study that showed if a woman gets married, if the day a woman gets married, she's a virgin, she had like a 97%, like somewhere around 95% chance of a successful marriage. The woman who married the only guy she had sex with um, was also like that, let's say 93%. Um, the woman who married the second guy she had sex with, I think it was like 88% chance of successful marriage. And then if the woman, so that means she had two men. The woman who had three men, it's like it drops. You know, when they had six different men, it just drops off the table. So the more men a woman has sex with, the more likely she has divorce. She's going to be divorced. So the less men, the woman who's a virgin on her wedding date had the highest chances of a successful marriage. Hey, some men are selfish, but some men are actually not even hooking up with women. They think uh, being, what do you guys call Captain Save-A-Ho, right? So they believe uh, championing the woman and saying women, it's a woman's body and she can sleep with as many men as she wants, and if men can do it, women can do it. There are guys out there who are actually saying those words, and they believe by doing that women are going to say, oh, you're our hero and we want to be with you. The women don't want to be with those guys. They're still losing. The women might use them. They might even use them to raise their son, uh, or single, they're a single mother and they need someone to fill in financially because the father's not there. So those guys think they are winning. So they're losing, even though yes, they think they're being selfish. They think they are winning, but they don't even have the facts. So that's why today I want to bring out facts, and I encourage you guys to share this video. If you're on IG, bring people in, share this, because men need to understand the facts instead of trying to argue and say, well, you can't say women can't do it. Yes, we can. There's not even statistical, there's just biochemical factual information as to what happens when men and women have sex and what happens to women that doesn't happen to men. And now this guy is going to go down the path of mental health and what happens to women that doesn't happen to men. Yeah, I got it. Hey, but breakthrough kid, you know what? Society is built by men and society stands on men, not on women. So if men want this corrected, men are going to have to do this. Cannot depend on women. And we already see the more women believe they can just sleep around, the more insane they become. And insane, I'm using it loosely, but hybristophilia. There are all kinds of, they're depressed, they're in anxiety, they're going down all kinds of, yeah, I understand men are walking away. I understand. But as this feminism spreads throughout the world, that, where are they going to go? To planet Mars? I mean, at some point, men are going to have to put their foot down and draw a line in the sand. And if women don't like it, let them go to move. Let women go to an island where they can, what do you call it? Whore Island. That will be the name of the island. They can be as promiscuous as they want. Yeah, but yeah, well, the imperator, women are going to watch men rebuild it. That's the problem. We destroy this. Who's going to have to rebuild it? Not women. And then when men rebuild it, the first thing women are going to say is, "You let the last society get destroyed. You should have put your foot on our neck, and you should have never let that happen. So you're incompetent, so we should run it. So men will rebuild it and you'll be right back in the same situation. And by letting it be destroyed doesn't mean women are going to change their behavior. You have to, I said it many times, you have to look at women like water and men being a container. If men, you can let it destroy, but women will still be all over the place. You still have to contain women. There's no way around that. If you rebuild it, you're still going to have to contain women, and you will not have changed their mindset. Men need to build a wall of masculinity and dare women to go through that. You know what's interesting? I'm already hearing that some of the younger women are already starting to notice that their aunts and mothers and grandmothers lost. They they picked the losing side. It's just not hearing it enough. And and the feminists don't want women to have the facts that are being laid out here. So let's get a few more facts on their mental instability. Well, not just politics, because it's wealthy families, large landowners, and corporations that write the policies and tell politicians what to do. So men can write policies; they would just have to organize. You can create a PAC, a super PAC. You can create a super PAC with $1 billion in it and write a check to politicians and say these are the laws that you need to change. And if they don't do it, then you start taking men out of your super PAC and put them in office. But you've got to pay to do that. Women are doing that. You better believe they are. They are raising money and financing campaigns to make sure these people win. See, we think they just voting at the booth. They're putting people in office that support their agenda. That's what has to happen. Corporations write these policies. Politicians don't write policies. That's the thing that people have to understand. Women are having these policies written, or they're having corporations write policies, or wealthy families. I mean, I don't want to go down the path of conspiracy, but we allowed women to vote, and they wanted free stuff. And these were mostly women who were wives of wealthy men, so their life was so good for them they were bored and didn't know what to do. That's really where this problem has started. Men made all these conveniences so women didn't have to wash clothes in a river and start fire with wood to cook food. Wood, where they had to put wood in the stove. We made life so easy that they were bored, so they created all these problems. Uh, well, here's the fact: men build societies, and we're accountable for what happens in it. And if we start funding politicians and the ones who don't support men's agenda, we put your brother in politics. We put you in there, your uncle. And we put people in there who will make sure our agenda happens. That's what everyone else is doing. Look at the Rockefellers that had politicians, the Kennedys. Ted Kennedy was in the Senate for decades. So lots of people put their person in. Now, if you go back to like early 1900s, uh, Andrew Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and John D. Rockefeller Sr. put the president they wanted in office. They financed it. They put their person in because they put in the person they wanted to look out for their agenda. Like, politicians are for sale. They technically have no power. They are there to mediate, so that when wealthy families, large landowners, and corporations can't come to an agreement, the government mediates the policies so that supposedly everyone's happy, right? Yep, yep. But Ted Kennedy remained in the Senate for decades. John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy were deleted, yes, but the Kennedys stayed in office. Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller was governor. So, there are people who are, and he wasn't the only Rockefeller in politics. You put family and friends in office so that they take care of your agenda, man. This is the thing that guys have to really get. That's going to take first organization, and when you organize, you're going to have to put some money behind that organization so that you can accomplish, so you can have a laser focus and put and sit down with lobbyists and say these are the laws that we want written, and you see to it that judges that are appointed that they also are supporting your agenda. So men are the only ones that can do this. Can't look for women to do it. Even women who say they stand for and by men, women can't do this. Men have to do this. So, and now think about it. If women are out here being promiscuous and suffering from mental health, what kind of policies do you think they are going to create? Do you think they're going to care about the greater good for society and they're suffering from mental health challenges? That's like letting your children come out and make policies. This is what men have to understand. So let's hear about promiscuity and mental health.
So as female promiscuity goes up, there's higher reports of personality disorders, depression. There's a massive increase in substance abuse that's directly correlated to promiscuity in women. So it reveals over here, according to borderline personality disorder status with the BPD personality scale diagnostics questionnaire, we found that the mean number of sexual partners among positive participants was nearly double that of negative participants. So there is a direct correlation between personality disorders and promiscuity. So as it correlates to substance abuse, there was a strong association between substance abuse and interpersonality anxiety stemming from possibly failed sexual partnerships, which of course lead to abuse, and it says especially in women. So there's no direct correlation with men specifically, but it did show up a lot with women.
And I think that one, he pulled up the same study I pulled up from NIH, National Institute of Health. That is, that's as credible as you get in the U.S. So they're finding substance abuse and mental disorders in women from promiscuity.
Again, guys, these are all studies that you can find for yourself. Just use Google, it's your friend. So one of the other problems that goes along with that is if you have a woman involved in your life that you invite into your life personally. And I always tell guys to make sure that they're very careful about who they invite into their inner circle. You should spend at least a year or two with a woman before you decide if you want to invite her into your life on a long-term basis, if you want to have kids with her. I'm not a big fan of marriage. I've talked about this a lot on my channel. You can search, for videos on that. It's quite hostile towards men. But specifically, your chance of divorce and ending up in a situation where you have an unhealthy relationship with a woman with a personality disorder, if she's promiscuous, goes up dramatically. These are facts. These are not things that I'm making up. They're factual things that we know based on studies. If we have a guy that has a choice between two women and one's got a very low notch count and lost her virginity quite later on in life versus guy B, you can take two identical twins who wipes up somebody that lost her virginity at quite a young age and has a bigger notch count. The chances of, twin A being happier than twin B are significantly higher. Twin B has a higher probability of marrying somebody or getting involved with somebody on a long-term basis that could have substance abuse issues, that could have a personality disorder, that could be very difficult to deal with over a long-term basis. The other problem with that as well is when women have a promiscuous past, they also have a higher chance of not being able to stay faithful over a longer period of time. It's a lot easier for them to leave and go to the next relationship. It's not that likely that they're going to want to stay and do the work or take ownership if they have a past or a history of quickly moving from one guy to the other over in rapid succession. Now, one of the things that a lot of guys don't understand is they often like to ask women, well, how many guys have you been with? I think it's usually women that ask guys that first, if I'm being honest. And I think it's because what they're trying to do is they're trying to assess you as far as suitability. It's basically a shit test to see if you know your stuff. And if
So just quick comment, this whole conversation about don't try to turn a hoe into a housewife. This is what he's talking about. It's easier for her to just jump to the next guy. She set her brain up for that, even if it works against her and it's unhealthy. Uh, and a lot of these women, part of the problem is uh, they've started, and while I understand many of them may have been raped or molested at a young age, um, whether they have or haven't, it, the value that she has on herself is very low. So a lot of times a woman will jump ship because she's terrified that you are going to find out what she thinks of herself. Most women don't tell you what they really think of themselves. But most women think something's wrong with them, that they're screwed up, and she will jump ship for fear you are going to find out that she's as screwed up as she believes she is. So many women will presuppose that you're going to break up with her. So she's kind of saving her own feelings by jumping ship first. A lot of women don't tell you that. So it's easy for them to jump. They're afraid of what you're going to find out. And it becomes a habit. But a lot of them are trying to not get found out that they are just fucked up. And see, the fucked up part is that's what they think of themselves. But they've been trying to hide that. And the solution for some women is to just find a guy who's more fucked up than she is, so that she feels like she has an upper hand. And if she chooses a guy who's a decent guy, she's constantly searching for what's wrong with you, so that she can say, well, you know how women do. You put something on the table. Look, we need to address this. Well, what about you? No. And last night I was talking about in this room about the liability of single women, and I laid out how here's what I know when you're a single mother. You chose a guy, you chose the wrong guy, and you had sex with him. And that's the first poor decision. Second one is you allowed the wrong guy to impregnate you. Third poor decision is you had the baby. So you got with the wrong guy. You let him impregnate you where you could have prevented that. You had the baby, and then you broke up. You broke off. You allowed the relationship to fall apart. So what I know about you is you make poor decisions. So one of the women said, "So are you saying you never made a mistake?" I said, "We need to deal with what I just put on the table." And she kept trying to say, well, you make mistakes too. And I said, here is an example of you making a poor decision. And this is what men are telling you. I put something on the table and you want to change the subject and talk about whether I make mistakes. Getting pregnant is not a mistake. That's a poor decision. And maybe this is very much about mental health, because you lack the ability to discern, uh, the kind of man you allow to impregnate you. And the fact that you can't even talk about it and you want to keep changing. And I'm telling you, this is the only conversation on the table. You're showing more poor decision making. And finally, she shut up, and the other women stayed focused on what I was saying. But very difficult to accomplish anything with someone who's suffering from mental health. They will have a difficult time being able to solve problems. Yeah, triple jeopardy, exactly. A track record of poor decision making. And what's the mental impact of that triple jeopardy, right? Women choosing the wrong guy, having a baby with the wrong guy, being abandoned, having a child who's emotionally traumatized because his father is not in his life. I mean, and then she's got to deal with that. It's like two children raising one another. Yeah, I don't call getting pregnant is not a mistake. You're an adult. If you were raped, that's one thing. But getting pregnant, you know exactly how pregnancy happens, and that's just poor decision making, not protecting your womb. Women can say all they want. It's the man's fault too. It's your body. You know that the man can walk, he can die, anything can happen. And if you don't take care of your womb, that's poor decision making. That's poor uh, care for your own body. So, think about it. If you, are you going to let someone just feed you food that you don't want to eat? So why are you letting someone dump sperm into your body? And we already listened to the woman who talked about how it takes a woman's body 6 months to adjust to a man's sperm. Most women don't understand this. So, they'll have multiple children. Hell, you can even find women who were impregnated by, they had sex with two different men in the same day and conceived both. They had children from two different men. They gave birth. I've even seen where a woman was impregnated by a black guy and a white guy in the same day and had twins. So, this is, that's extreme, but getting pregnant is a poor decision. And this is, we got to start looking at this as a mental health issue and not just some arbitrary mistake that, you coddle someone and say, oh, you made a mistake. No, no. Like either you're going to be held accountable or you're going to be classified as mentally unstable. You shouldn't even be raising children. So what else is this guy saying here?
It's basically a shit test to see if you know your stuff and if you're somebody that's of in need or desire, if you will. And because we try to assess each other's notch count, it's pretty interesting. But as far as women go, when you start asking her for it, she's going to start giving you numbers. And usually guys tend to overestimate what their notch count might be, whereas women tend to underestimate. And I'll tell you why, because women generally only keep track of, in their head anyway, based on their own experiences and their reality, longer term relationships, and the like of that, something that has some sort of meaning. There's also a higher probability for guys.
Yeah, he's now referring to an article in Psychology Today where they said that how some women calculate their numbers is they don't count one night stands. They try to count meaningful relationships. So when you ask how many men have you been with, they're like, well, I had 3 long-term relationships, and I had 1 short-term, right? So they'll tell you 4, but they won't tell you about the 21 night stands they had and the relationships that lasted a week long or a weekend. It wasn't just a one night stand because they don't count those for some reason. And oral sex, they may not factor that in. So it's amazing how women assess their sexual partners. They just kind of try to block out. Well, it was only a one night stand, so that doesn't count as sex. Is their logic?
That she might have been alpha widowed, meaning she's still got an unhealthy attachment or pining for a guy from her past that might have let her go. Setting that aside, though, they're generally not going to reveal relationships or sexual encounters that include things like friends with benefits, threesomes, lesbian encounters, during her travels to Vegas and Europe for the summer and stuff like that. That's where these terms, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas sort of thing, are coined from. So you have to understand you're not going to get the truth, and trying to estimate it is going to be quite difficult. I mean, one of the easiest way to do it is if she was in a long-term relationship for 10 years, and before you met her, there was really nothing else going on in her world. There's no travel. There was no, staying at university for 5 to 7 years or something like that in dorms with girls and frat parties and weekends away and all that sort of stuff. You can probably assume that the promiscuity level is going to be quite low. But on the other hand, she lived by herself. You meet her at 38. She's traveled around the world. She's had very low indications of long-term relationships or any absence of them completely in the past. You can pretty much guess that the level of promiscuity is going to be quite high. So for guys, it's not that easy to assess. But if you use a little bit of, that coconut that's rolling around in your noggin, you should be able to assess somewhere what the notch count would look like. And so, guys, what it really boils down to is if you're going to invite a woman into your life, you want to be very, very careful and selective about who you let into your inner circle, especially if it's on a long-term basis. If you let the right woman in, she can really improve your life. She can add some value. She can be a complement to your life. If you bring the wrong woman in, she can make your entire life a total train wreck. So you have to be very, very selective about who you're going to let in on your inner circle. You should definitely vet for promiscuity. I've given you some good, useful tips.
So definitely. Yeah, absolutely. You should be vetting women. And yeah, hey, you know what? In Imperator, you're right on the money because they don't want a man. They understand their value is predicated on that. There are some things that women do understand, and they're trying to use excuses and say we're holding a double standard, but sex doesn't affect men the same way it does when you keep switching partners. They can go into denial. They can call it misogynist and sexist all they want, but men are using that. Just like in the example, if you're a 2021 Bugatti with 50,000 miles on it, that's a problem. You lose value. So women understand this. They're just trying to weasel out of having any kind of responsibility for that. And I posted a video on YouTube about a woman who said she was 300 pounds and that a man should accept her as she is. And if a man can accept her as at her worst, then he deserves to be with her at her best. So, it's that kind of mentality that too many women have, that you should just accept me, uh, microchimerism, the possibility of her having STDs, because the higher her body count, the higher chance of her having multiple STDs, uh, and having the DNA of another man still inside of her. We should just accept that. And look, this is why any woman who's trying to sell you on love conquers all, and if you love me, you would do this, and you don't love me. Like, love is not what it takes to make a relationship. You need to be compatible. And if you're compatible with an emotionally unstable woman, I will shut my mouth, and you know what? Good luck, Tiger. But I would think most men are not emotionally unstable, and I think an emotionally stable woman would not want to be with an emotionally unstable man. And a man, whether you're stable or not, you definitely don't want to be with an emotionally unstable woman. Women are more unstable emotionally than men, just as a general, just because the way their brain functions. They worry about things. They suffer from anxiety and depression more often than men. Insomnia, 3.5 times more likely to attempt suicide, not commit, 3.5 times more likely to attempt suicide. So we already understand there's some inherent instability that comes with being a woman. But once you go to being promiscuous and actually doing damage to your brain and your body, there's no reason that any man should inherit her poor decisions. This is not about mistakes. Like this is a woman who is destroying her body and her mind, and want you to just accept that. It's just like the woman who's 5'7", 300 pounds. She's destroying her body and her mind, and you should just accept that. She's a liability. So promiscuous women are a liability, and there's no reason for any man to accept that. Right, right. You don't get to experience the 300-pound woman at her best. I mean, if she's 300 pounds when you met her, where do you think that weight is going? You think she's dropping down to what, 175? She's going to do that for you? If she couldn't do it for herself, how the hell is she going to do that for you? So, what do you guys think of some of the science dropped out here, and hearing a man and a woman, and studies talking about women and their the consequences of having multiple partners. Women think it's a free ride because they were told, well, if men can do it, you can do it. What happened to the days when your mother used to say, well, if your friend jumps off the bridge, are you going to do it too? Like, women just jumped off the bridge without even understanding what they were getting into. And a lot of guys have found themselves dealing with women like this. Uh, and for some men, what that could leave you a bad taste in your mouth and thinking, well, just women are crazy. But and I'm back. Yes, the stream it froze for a hot second, so uh, something tripped it up. But anyway, I was coming in for a landing. So I was just saying that women don't walk around with a sign telling you what their body count is. So, some of the most gorgeous women have whored around. And as a man, it's your job to be able to discern that. I mean, when you can understand that there are certain signs and signals, right? So, uh, too much alcohol, um, uh, heightened sensitivity, around talking about her body count, right? So, a woman who has been in two long-term relationships, Okay. So so I'm back again. Hey, yeah, maybe they're not encouraged by the education. So let's get ready to close this out. Yeah, hey, what I was getting at is a woman who's had two long-term relationships, like 5 years each, and one short-term, maybe 6 months. She's going to be less defensive about asking her number. She will tell you about her relationship. She will tell you about guys she dated in between that she the old battle axe. You're back. Yeah, I'm back again. So let's get ready to close this out, guys. I appreciate your support. I'm glad you guys found value in this. You get Hey, thanks, Imperator. I'm gonna do like Looney Tunes and say abri, abri, abri. That's all, folks. Thanks for joining me. Have a great evening, great weekend. Talk to you soon. Take care and goodbye. Good night.